Predator Badlands was fantastic. I love the Predator franchise. I love the Alien franchise. And I love the Alien vs. Predator franchise, despite its theatrical missteps, because I think a lot of the comic and book material is enjoyable, and scratches that itch of two very different types of alien monsters clashing. For those who don't know, I've written extensively on the topic of Alien, Predator, and AVP, mostly because I generally adore this franchise and want the best out of it. And it seems that the roaring 2020s is a decade of the AVP franchise. With the financial and critical success of Alien Romulus, Alien Earth, Prey, and Predator Killer of Killers, Disney seems to be on the absolute roll for both franchises. However, one film stirred up gossip the most. A film that decided to flip the script and not just be an overt AVP movie, or at least exist in a setting without much of there being a xenomorph taking the spotlight, as well as focus on Predator as a protagonist. And I am happy to say that Predator Badlands is absolutely fucking fantastic. One of the best movies in both franchises, and with some of the most memorable characters put to screen. It has amazing action sequences, gorgeous scenery, brutal gore for a PG-13 movie of all things, and honestly great humor that had my theater laughing out loud at some small parts of the film. Now, this film is not a horror film like the other films in the genre, but rather a dark space fantasy. It's almost Arthurian tale, a lone warrior on a quest to fulfill his destiny despite all the odds, and against all naysayers, encountering odd fellows to add to his adventuring party, and growing as a person while still keeping to his predator ideals. So he's never really human in that regard of, oh, my predator culture is bad, I need to stop. It's more like, I can do better. With the Alien and Predator aesthetic, this includes a lot more spines being ripped out or people being dissolved in acid. Circling back to what makes this film so great though, is that like Prey before, Badlands is not just about the adventure, but the themes it wants to explore within the setting itself. So this is where my review ends, and my analysis of its themes comes into play. Suffice to say, Predator Badlands is an amazing film, and I think it's well worth the price of theater admission. There will be spoilers beyond this point to tackle the topics of this film, so be warned on that front. But I hope you enjoy what I have to say. Share your own thoughts on the film in the comments below. So when talking about the themes of Predator Badlands, I think the most overpowering one so far, or one at least shadows the entire narrative, would have to be that of the hostile culture of Yautja, which is the actual name for the Society of Predators, and Weyland-Yutani culture. I've talked extensively in past, mostly on Tumblr and Space Battles, on how the Predator Yautja's culture is one of supremacy and treating all of the life forms as expendable content farms. Their honor culture is inherently hypocritical, as they go after less advanced species or innocent wildlife with their highly advanced technology. It's the equivalent of finding honor in hunting a lion with an armored jeep and minigun. If you happen to be one of the superhuman skill to kill or cripple Yautja, their methodology is literally to blow themselves up out of spite and to keep that technology out of your hands. The jungle hunter literally cackling in joy at the idea of blowing up Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the city hunter about to blow himself up in the middle of LA. Despite not even being close to death, he's just pissed that he's being thwarted, so he's just gonna kill himself and everyone within the city with a mini nuke. As the tagline of Prey said, the Comanche hunted to live, while the Yautja lived to hunt. The sanctity of life means nothing to their culture beyond the personal glory of ending said life. Badlands even opens up with this charming quote from the Yautja Codex. The Yautja operate to none, threaten to none, and predator to all. Which makes Deck, the protagonist predator, his journey in Badlands is so fascinating because it plays into the culture of supremacy of the predators while also having him question how in-depth he needed to go to be like his father in the most toxic parts of his culture. Because Deck is a victim of Yautja culture and the revelation that they practice eugenics. Deck, being a malformed member of his species, is decided to be worthless and not even honorable to hunt to kill, his own father declaring that he deserved to be killed in his own sleep. And his father wasn't going to do this. He's ordering his own brother, Deck's brother, to kill Deck in his sleep. The Yautja culture, and this clan specifically, pulls the genetically inferior from their rank and file in the name of preserving their strength. And while we don't see much of the characterization of Deck's mother, the implication is that Deck's mother does not care for Deck at all. So It's not just on his father's side. And it's not just Deck who suffers from this Yaltric culture, but his own brother too. Kwai is passionate about Deck learning to be his own man, admonishing him for trying to fight like his father, and goes on a speech about how he respects Deck for saving his life as a child, implied to be that explosive toy they had. When Deck chooses to hunt Vikalis, literally the most dangerous animal that they're aware of, Kwai almost refuses him because it would be a death sentence for Deck. He does not want Deck to die, but he does end up respecting Deck's choice as a man, or so equivalent in the Yacha culture at least. And sadly, when ordered by his father to kill Deck, after failing to convince him that Deck deserves a chance to hunt, Kwai ultimately rejects part of his culture in favor of rescuing Deck and telling him to bring it home, aka Vikalis, while being killed by his own father in front of Deck brutally. It's a real dark counterpart to Tabe telling Naru and Prey to bring it home before being killed by the feral predator, as he's called. That can be its own post about the differences and similarities between Deck and Naru and Tabe and Kwai, but that's for a different video entirely. Throughout his journey to hunt Vikalis, much of Deck's views are challenged not only by the environment, it quite literally eats most of his predator tech, so symbolism, but by the inclusion of Thea and Bud. Thea is damaged Weyland-Yutani synth, one specifically built to be more sensitive and curious to better engage with the hostile ecosystem of Genna. Where Deck is a stoic, arrogant, and cold fighter, Thea is jovial, curious, and more cautious about the risk they take. They soon meet Bud, an alien infant that marks them as one of its pack and follows them on their journey. Without going over the movie in too much detail, Deck eventually learns to appreciate Thea and Bud, particularly after Thea gets him to open up about his brother's death, how the Yacha culture has left him isolated, and when Thea risks her own life several times to rescue Deck by going against her own culture. By the end of the film, Deck defeats his father and rejects his clan, choosing to instead start his own with Thea and Bud. Focus more on having members that support each other as a wolf pack rather than the eugenics and betrayal from before. I would, however, repeat that Deck does not reject Yacha culture as a whole. He still believes in the hunt. He still thinks that he should be unwavering in how he hunts down the most dangerous prey. Not once in the entire movie does he ever have a moral issue with the idea of hunting, of a species for sport, sentient or not. He is still a predator, someone who believes in the supremacy of the hunters, and how all species are game for a trophy. It's just that he took a step forward in claiming that certain individuals are his peers, Thea and Bud in particular. It's a stark contrast to someone who wholeheartedly abandons her culture in favor of the family that she finds, which is Thea. As mentioned before, Thea is a Weyland-Yutani synth, built for the sole goal of understanding and manipulating the animal life on Genna for the purposes of biological warfare, and weapons to use against Weyland-Yutani rivals. Where the Yacha can be seen as the rich supremacist fox hunters, nobility that thinks that they already own the land, Weyland-Yutani are full-blown colonizers, taking the idea of building better worlds to whole new extremes, and with the addendum of better worlds for Yutani attached in the fine print. Both cultures see everyone as exposable and dehumanizes their victims, and both cultures have used humans as slaves for entertainment and labor. Badlands focuses much more heavily on the scale of how Weyland-Yutani covets complete control over the universe, where the Yacha already assume that they are the elite of the elite, as mentioned before. It is fitting that Weyland-Yutani's vulture-esque craving to pick at dead alien ships, hostile planets, and scavenge Yacha technology means that when we first meet Thea, she's at the mercy of one of the vultures on Genna. Said vulture is not directly harming Thea, but it is keeping her isolated from the world she loves and the sister she wishes to protect, using her merely as a tool to create a larger nest. Symbolism. Much like how Deck's intervention allows Thea the power to free herself and kill that vulture, so too does her interactions with Deck allow her to see what harm Weyland-Yutani has done to Genna, and the casual cruelty of its servants. Tessa, Thea's twin sister, is the opposite of Kwai, where Kwai rejected his father and his culture in order to save his brother. Tessa rejects the familiarity of Thea in favor of remaining in power at Weyland-Yutani, and proceeds to sentence Thea to being deprogrammed. I've lambasted the supposed honor that the Yacha culture has as being thin-skinned at best, But that facade of honor that they believe in, that allows for people like Kwai to rationalize doing good acts. Yes, he did love his brother, that can't be denied. But it was his father acting dishonorably and ignoring the rights of a ritual hunt that galvanized Kwai into being able to act against him in the first place. And even then, he still told Dek to complete his hunt for his honor, even in death. Weyland-Yutani has no honor amongst its rank and file, facade or no. Yes, we try to paint a pretty corporate picture of professionalism and building better worlds for Earth, but it has and will always be about profit and control. We are vultures that want their nest to encompass the universe, and our agents like Tessa are fully aware of that. Even Thea was aware, hiding her true nature from Dek, out of shame for manipulating him. In many ways, Thea's breakaway from her culture was more powerful than Dek's. She didn't find a loophole in the code of Weyland-Yutani, but rather grew as a person who experienced love for life itself, self-loathing at being a traitor to someone she saw as a friend, and the hurt in realizing that her sister didn't love her, or at least used that love to manipulate her. She doesn't return to Weyland-Yutani, but cuts away completely for moral reasons, planning on living a life of total isolation, which makes it all the more emotional when she realized that Dek came back to save her because he respected her as a person. Beyond hostile culture, the greatest theme is probably corrupted parenting. Parents play a massive role in this story, and at least half of it is because they are pretty fucking evil. It's how they're evil that is fascinating though, especially in comparison to each other. Enyor and Mother play the parental roles for Dek and Kwai, and Thea and Tessa respectively, and both are monsters in entirely different ways. Mostly at least. They broadly share an uncaring attitude towards the sanctity of life, and of their own children, sure, but it's the scale and methodology that makes the distinction important. Enyor can best be described as Darth Vader without having any positive qualities. He is a clan head of the Yautja, and rules over the lesser Yautja, participating in eugenics, and has no problem murdering his eldest son for daring to go against his wishes. And it's not a quick death either. Enyor takes great pleasure in slowly dismembering, impaling, and beheading Kwai, also that Dek can see his brother die agonizingly slow in front of him. He's malicious, cruel, and just downright evil. Mother is none of that, because Mother is not a person per se. She is a mere program, an answering machine with pretty aesthetics, serving as the interface for the wider Weyland-Yutani Corporation. She is cold, heartless, and utterly inhuman. She is the hanging sword of Damocles over Thea and Tessa's necks, making it clear that their failure would mean that the company is displeased, and when the company is displeased, then decommissioning and deprogramming will occur. I talked about how Kwai and Tessa differed before. This shows it in another sense. Kwai stands his ground for Dek against Enyor. Tessa, who is just as emotional and sensitive as Thea is, has her question about Thea's safety brushed aside until she states her mission success rate, and Mother makes it clear that both sisters will be disposed of if they do not excel. Tessa chose to accept her role as an agent of colonization and corporate evil. Not without the shadow of the colonizing power hanging over her head, however. In her mind, it's best to lick the boot in the hopes that one day, burying that boot over another person's neck. If Enyor is Darth Vader, then Mother is a bureaucracy of the Imperium of Man, given a fancy logo and a smooth voice. Is it more evil for a parent to be inhumanly cruel or inhumanly disinterested? These two stand juxtaposed to the callous Mother and Dek and Thea themselves over the parenthood of Bud. The callous Mother is the purity of parenthood. Her existence is for the protection, care, and nurturing of her child. She is tender and kind, not just towards Bud, but towards Dek and Thea when they rescue her. She doesn't care about honor or percentages, only for doing the best for her child and the people who care for her. Dek and Thea adopting the orphan Bud takes on a new light as well. Dek refuses to abandon Bud once he realizes how alone Bud is, and Thea finds an outlet for her desire to protect Gana wildlife and appreciates growth through Bud. All of them find a means of respecting each other and appreciating what they have to offer as a clan, tossing away their pressures and punishments in favor of carrying on for a better life. But it has to be said, this better life is under the shadow of the Yautja hunting culture. Dek is the leader of the clan, and while he does take Thea's opinions into account and respects her, it is primarily a Yautja hunting culture. It might not be long before we have Dek Thea and Bud hunting the next protagonist, trying to innocently exist and just live out their days. And that's interesting. Deck and Thea aren't good people. They are better than the society that they come from. But it remains to be seen if it can grow into someone who is genuinely heroic, in the modern sense at least. Let me know your thoughts on Predator Badlands. Were there any other themes you noticed? Anything about my post you'd like to add or for perspective? I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and if you feel like it, donate to my coffee in the link below. Thank you, and watch out there. You never know when you might become the prey.